Hello if you are here, and maybe you'll be watching this later. Um, I'm very excited because the timing actually turns out to be perfect to begin the series on the four foundational goddess asteroids, beginning with Ceres, because the autumn equinox is the time of her rites of passage. We're actually kind of right on time for that. And if you've been in the Soul Tribe group, we've been contemplating a few of the asteroids that have come up through the gene keys, and I found that very simple, which is what I'm always trying to get to, the most simple way of doing astrology and gene keys. And just looking at one goddess over a month so that we have an introduction, like I'm going to do today on Ceres, and then we have a week where we contemplate the shadow, and we will have two gene keys for each goddess, our personality and our design. And so we have 2 weeks to contemplate, sorry, a week for the shadow, a week for the gift, a week for the city, and time to share with each other what our realizations are in that. And what I can honestly say about these goddess asteroids is that they are portals to help us get out of our really stuck patterns and to become whole, especially as women become whole. So there's three. There's Ceres, she was the first to be discovered, and she's the mother goddess. Then we have Pallas Athena, she's the warrior goddess, and you might say she's our inner masculine in a way as well. She's quite androgynous, active principle. Then we have Juno, who's about the sacred relationship. And finally, we have Vesta, who is the priestess. And all, even if you don't relate to that term, priestess, she's all about using the power of intention and the mind to create on the invisible levels. So she's a tremendously useful asteroid to be in touch with in ourselves. And between these four, we have like some really interesting historical stories. We've got some really interesting mythical archetypes and rites of passage, and they're really, really rich, actually. This introduction is a free one today. And if you want to join the journey of all of them, all you need to do is sign up to Soul Tribe Online, which is from 37, around 37 US dollars a month, is the lower rate, and you can see the rate yourself and sign up for 4 months, and then you can have access to the videos at any time and emails, etc. Okay, so dan da dan. Um, so that's what's on offer, and let's just begin today with let's begin with a little attunement to the mother goddess energy, the Ceres energy. So when I was a child growing up in South Africa, there was um, the orange trees and lemon trees. The brand was called Ceres, and that's what comes into my head as I close my eyes is the vision of orchards of oranges and lemons and mangoes. That was in South Africa, so very nice, warm climate. So Ceres is this energy of fertility of ourselves and the earth. She's all about our deeper attachment to this planet, our incarnation, our food, our mother, perhaps how we are as a mother to others if we are a mother. She can be very strengthening in that mother role. And she's been through a lot of suffering as well. Her daughter, Persephone, is abducted into the underworld and she goes through a huge transformation. She goes from the riches of Mount Olympus to the rags of trying to find her daughter in the underworld. And I know that at least a few of us here will relate to that story of mother-daughter and the underworld themes, or mother-child, make it wider. The loss, the suffering, the worry, the deep worry, and the nurture, the powerful nurture that the mother brings. So protective. So I've made a little presentation that I'm going to share. And so I'll be talking for a while, and then there'll be a bit of time at the end to share. Perhaps you already know where your Ceres is in your chart. But if not, that's fine. You don't need to know today. You just need to know for the week ahead if you decide you're going to carry on this contemplation. So let me open the presentation fully for a start. So what we are contemplating is Goddess Asteroids and Gene Keys. So this is my logo here. I'll point this out because it has peacock feathers and the peacock eye. We've been talking about peacock a lot. And then we have this is one of the Gene Keys symbols here, the yoga symbol, because we're a yoga platform, but we are integrating Gene Keys into that physical and meditational exploration. So these four Goddess Asteroids, we're going to be exploring our inner space, but also what we witness in the world for this archetype. How is she doing out there in the world? So let me introduce you to Ceres, who was the first goddess asteroid to be discovered. I absolutely love the discovery story of Ceres because I think it tells the story of what the goddess asteroids are really all about. So she was discovered on a very significant day, 1st of January 1801. It's actually the same date as the formation of Britain and Ireland, strangely. And she's discovered by a guy called Piazzi in Sicily, who was a monk and an astronomer, which I think is quite an unusual combination. So immediately we have this figure who combines science and spirituality in equal fold. And this is a polarization, if you like, that is being healed by the goddesses. So it's kind of amazing that Piazzi discovered Ceres because mathematicians like Kepler had said that there would be an asteroid between Mars and Venus. I'm just going to come out of my thing for the moment while I tell the story. Um, and and so they divided the zodiac up between this whole kind of conglomerate of European astronomers, and they called themselves the Celestial Police, and in German accent, which makes it sound like even more sort of extreme to me. And you could just imagine this kind of patriarchal, yeah, we've divided up the heavens, we're each going to watch a piece, and we will discover where this asteroid is. And it just feels so kind of that kind of patriarchal way of going about things, almost like we control the stars, we are the celestial police. And it just makes me chuckle because the universe had such a different ideas about what was about to happen. Because Piazzi's a monk and he's given this job as an astronomer, and he finds it totally by accident, except we know there are no accidents. And when she's verified as this asteroid, he calls her Ceres because Ceres is the Roman name for Demeter, the Greek name of the mother goddess. And and so she seems to him the perfect thing. And there's a history, of course, of them being called after Greek and Roman names, planets. But I wonder if he thought about calling her Mother Mary, for example, as he was a Christian monk. But I like this as well, that there's this flow of energy, and this has been such a huge theme in my life between Christianity and the older religions, whether it's through the Greek and Roman, the Celtic. I've explored many traditions actually, and just finding the wisdom in them, and actually realizing that Mother Mary and Jesus were living in a indigenous community themselves. So, our idea that there's a separation between indigenous wisdom and Christianity is kind of a false thing as well. So there we have this incredible discovery, and it almost is like two fingers up to the celestial police, which always like just fills me with delight. And this is kind of what happened in Ceres and Demeter's story, that when her child Persephone is stolen away into the underworld, no one knows what's happened to her. Um, she leaves she has high status on Mount Olympus, but she leaves that and she literally, her clothes become rags. She's in a state of real despair and grief. Her daughter might be dead. She doesn't know what's happened to her. And eventually she discovers that her father, Zeus, connected with the planet Jupiter, has given Persephone in marriage to Hades, who is Pluto, without any discussion with the daughter and the mother. So there's a real kind of patriarchal theme here as well, of women having no power over who they're going to marry. And thankfully for all of us here, whatever our situation, we do have a choice these days. We're not just kind of given with a dowry to this one or this one, or who could be anyone really. I guess with women had no rights back in those times. So if you were married to someone violent or horrible to you, you just had to kind of put up with your lot, really. Okay, so I'm going to pop back onto the presentation just to look at this. So when we contemplate our Ceres, going back. Right, so we've said when she's discovered, and these are all the things we can consider when we're considering Ceres in our chart, where our particular Ceres lands. Historically, this period from 1801 until now marks a period of intense awakening of the consciousness and the need for equality in gender relationships. And all of us are working on that in the Aquarian age. If you're here, you're working on that, whether you're with a partner or without one. Many women are choosing or are in a position where they're not with partners in this lifetime because the need to stay in integrity and sovereignty as a woman outweighs the need to be with a man for survival or whatever, procreation, whatever other needs we had in the past. Now the only way we're going to be in integrity is to be with a masculine partner, and indeed any partner, if you're gay and watching this, any partner, we need to be in a state of equality. Now, the other really huge area that Ceres brings up is attachment, mother-child attachment. And I actually adopted a child for about 7 years. He was 5 at the time. He came to live with me. And whoa, it was like an initiation of fire, really, into the importance of the bonding of mother and child, what happens to the brain, the brain isn't wired up, and it really affects our ability to relate to other humans, feel safe in our body. It affects our relationship to food, nurturing ourselves, nurturing others. And even though I'd seemingly come from quite a normal background, I still had quite deep layers actually of attachment, surprisingly deep. And I know what they're from now. And, many of our parents knew nothing about attachment then and did things that were actually pretty problematic. The big example is leaving the baby to cry. That was something that was considered like good parenting practice back in the day. Just leave them to cry, they'll be fine, and don't pick them up or whatever you do. But actually, it's the opposite, that the child really needs that safety of the holding and the eye contact and all those kind of things. And then there's a whole other layer. I came to understand Ceres as our attachment to Earth as our mother. It's very hard for many of us to trust that the Earth will support all of our needs on the planet. And in Britain, one of the huge areas of political issues, and I think this is the case in California as well, on the border there with Mexico, is the issue of refugees. And you can kind of perceive the underlying lack of trust in the earth to support us as humans through this kind of fear, which is generated daily in Britain anyway, through the newspapers and the media, that, we're going to be overrun and all of us are going to starve and lose our livelihoods and etc. When actually where these asteroids are taking us is like to a temple of trust, especially Ceres, that we can rely on the earth, we can trust her, we can rest on her. And if we were all living at a higher frequency in that trust, the earth could easily support every single human being, and like poverty would vanish overnight from the earth. So we need a bit of a quantum leap to get there, but quantum leaps are possible. So I want to talk a bit about the rites of passage of Demeter. I'm going to refer to as Demeter now rather than Ceres. This is kind of how I think about it in terms of in a priestess way. So years ago, when I was becoming a priestess, being initiated, the first rites of passage I was given to put together for my group was the rite of passage of Demeter. So I got really deeply into the story. And as I was doing this morning, I'm thinking, oh, wow, the rites of passage take place at the autumn equinox, where the rites of passage are a journey into the underworld, mirroring the journey of Persephone and Ceres Demeter as they go through this initiation into femalehood. So mythical themes could include encountering the dominant and uncaring masculine who overrides your wishes, mother and daughter or son stories, the loss of a child in many ways that could happen. Planetary influences, we've got Jupiter, Pluto, Persephone is a asteroid, in fact, one we did recently. Hecate, who I'm going to talk about in a minute, is, and if you're part of the Gene Keys Dream Arc, you could also look up the pig, because the pig is Demeter's special animal. So, yeah, so pig is like the totem animal. So when I went into this rite many years ago, this still sticks so fantastically in my head is this character called Balbo. But firstly, Demeter meets Hecate, who's the goddess of the underworld, and she stands with her white dogs at the three pathways. And she is the one who is actually able to tell Demeter that Persephone is in the underworld. And so she's kind of the she directs and guides. And then she meets this character called Balbo, and I love this, and it again dovetails so perfectly, because those of you on Soul Tribe will know I'm leading this meditation called the Superpower of Joy. And Balbo is this like living vagina that makes Demeter laugh. And it's somehow in this laughter, she's very crude and raucous. And Demeter is just pulled out of this state of grief into laughter. And this is like a key turning point in the story. And actually, a lot of people don't know about the Balbo bit. It's only if you kind of dig deeper into the story that you get to Balbo. So she represents a kind of raucous sexuality of the feminine, like a wild sexuality and untamed, but very sacred. You know, Balbo's not about having sex with men. Balbo is about like she's a crone energy for a start, and she's about women like really loving their own bodies, loving our aging bodies and our own sexuality. So yeah, for me, Balbo is like she's just like so cool. Okay, so looking at Goddess Asteroids and Gene Keys, so as I mentioned, I use the website Taraka.io, which is Kim Gould's website, and you can use it for free for your own chart and what's sort of happening right now. It's called the Just Now chart. But there is other places you can find Ceres. My own astrology software includes her as well. So we can find out from Taraka IO where Ceres lies in our birth chart. And you can go and find that information out anytime at www.taraka.io. And also I looked at, where is Ceres today? Because she can tell us something about where we begin on the journey of Ceres. And she's actually at Gene Key 21, line 5, which is called A Noble Life, leading from the shadow of control to the gift of authority and the city of valor. This is like very pertinent, I'd say, to where I am. And often the shadow of control is one that when I'm under stress emerges the urge to, try and control people, try and control the environment, try and control what's happening. And then the stepping into our own authority or my own authority, it's like a deep sense of self-belief when we stand in our own authority. And if there's one thing I think these goddess asteroids give us, it's our sense of authority and sovereignty as women, that all the machinations of being dependent, codependent, controlled by others, oppressed by others, we can actually break free of all of it by standing in our own authority. And it's the city of valor. So I always think of that as very knightly kind of energy. And in the I Ching, it's called biting through, like biting through. I love that, because sometimes the energy is like so intense that there's just this need to kind of bite through. And yeah, and whenever we contemplate these asteroids, we will get a hit of the shadow of our own, perhaps a hit of the shadow of where it is right now. Right, I think I've finished. So I'm going to just talk a little bit just to kind of give you more of a sense of how to contemplate your own gene keys. I mean, all of us here will have contemplated other gene keys in our activation sequence. And it's pretty much the same thing. And through this process, we'll have, as I say, a month. So my natal series falls in gene key 24. Its programming partner is gene key 44. Now, back in the day, I think I've been in Gene Keys about 7, 8 years now. Back in the day, I read Gene Key 24. I don't know why I read it. And it was the one that just went, it's like a cellular reaction. And my consciousness just opened. Um, and it's so relevant, really. So this one moves from the shadow of addiction to the gift of invention and the city of silence. So, what I got from this, I mean, I have a lot of addiction patterns in my life. My parents were sort of functioning alcoholics. Um, and But from a really young age, I was growing up in apartheid South Africa, where addiction was rife amongst the population, the white population, probably the African population too, actually, because we're living in so much suffering that alcohol was the way of kind of dulling that out. So from the age of 11, I was drinking and smoking, and those became sort of lifelong patterns, really, up until I started on this journey. And especially when I read this gene key, because I was always like, oh, well, I'm just doing it a little bit. It's not really a huge problem. And I've gone through cycles of that. In fact, I've come out of one even quite recently where I was like, oh, actually, this is more of a problem than I thought it was. But what this gene key says is, and you might have different addictions, spending money, even yoga could be an addiction, I guess. Anything can really be an addiction when it's becoming a sort of avoidance pattern, I guess. But yoga at least is good for you. So if you're going to have one that's like that, then yeah, yoga's a good one. But what it's basically saying in Gene Key 24 is that addiction is a neural pathway. It's like feel the stress, reach for this or do this. And it's kind of soothing, like a reaction in your brain. And you get an immediate hit, it calms down, but then of course it's going to come back at some point. And so you keep going round and round in this loop of desire, then you fulfill the desire, then you might feel sick or you might feel, not so great. And then you come down and then you go round again where you indulge in it again and then you don't feel so good anymore. So it just goes round and round and round like a hamster on a wheel. And I think the game changer for me was that Gene Key 24 says that if you never get off this wheel, you will never really discover your genius. Your inventive self needs to be off the wheel. Your mind has to be off the wheel of addiction in order to start really accessing your true genius. And I'm a very creative person. So that was like, oh, I don't want to miss out on that, So I had like finally a huge incentive of why I would change, why I would meet the challenge of doing something different. And, the different is in those moments of stress, the Gene Keys contemplation is pausing, just pausing, breathing, being with what's going on. In fact, I'd done mindfulness before Gene Keys. And so I was already in that kind of, right, let's be mindful what's actually going on inside. Let's not just act and react in the world, but get into this inner space, exploring the inner space. So, so yeah, and I think it is kind of my destiny to bring Goddess Asteroids to Gene Keys, and I know that because of how this series one affected me. And I've had many, many powerful experiences with Gene Keys, but always the 24 is the one that's like the most powerful. So it'd be interesting to see if you get, the same kind of hit as your activation sequence, or, what series actually brings in it's almost like adding another layer to your profile is to explore these, and they are doorways that can overcome our karma. Our karma is where we're going round and round. It's very hard to break karma because, it's encoded in us from birth. This is your karma. And it's only when we stop behaving in certain ways, we stop being certain ways, that the karma can, my experience of it is like fizzing out. It comes to 0 point, and that's the end of the karma. But while we keep with it, fighting, resisting, whatever, the karma just keeps going, it just keeps rolling along. So this is a very useful practice. Okay, so I've done quite a good chunk of talking there. I'm going to pause the recording and just invite those here to see if you know where your series is yet, if you want to respond to anything I've said or ask a question. So let me pause.